This morning we're down in Canaris Vineyard that I manage and lease, and we're in the process of mowing down this very vigorous and healthy cover crop. With a good dense planting of a max organic type of cover crop like we have here, and it's planted early in the fall. In this case it was pretty early September. It had a good chance to take off, but the competitiveness of it also inhibits a lot of the other unwanted weeds from getting established. So essentially we're just growing our bell beans, our favas, and the oats, and some vetch out here as a source of nutrients. And what I'm looking at is under the vines, you can see there's somewhat of an explosion of unwanted weeds here that we're going to be hoe plowing out. And there's some mallow right here, there's some groundsel, some burr clover, and a lot of other things. But those same kind of weeds could be actually growing in here, but because again of the competition for sunlight, nutrients, and everything else, there is not a whole lot of that protruding up. And this is one of the main reasons I like to keep the cover crops in as late as possible and cultivate them down and just get rid of them, because they do a great job of eliminating a lot of our other unwanted weed species, if you will. I know a lot of growers would like to mow as soon as the first sunny day comes out, but I like to make sure that our beans and our vetches are actually putting out little nodules of nitrogen on the roots, and that nitrogen is available for the vines later on. So many benefits of a good cover crop and good cover crop management. And that's one thing I've not talked about, is that really this is almost like a second crop. We're dealing with another crop that we actually planted within amongst our primary crop, the grapevine. And if you manage it well, and we're not going to harvest it, but we are going to harvest it in a sense for its nutrients and organic matter in this case, and till it back into the soil, into the earth. And hopefully that will give us a great population of earthworms and bountiful nitrogen for these vines as well. When I plant cover crops, I've always had the practice of throwing in some fertilizer at the same time in the seed drill. A product such as 1152 or 1620, something with some phosphorus in it. And again, I think if we look at how green this cover crop is, it's not pale at all. It's got a lot of nitrogen in it. It's generating a lot of nitrogen, and all that nitrogen will be turned back into the soil for the use by the vines. This kind of cover crop harbors a lot of good nutrients, but also a lot of beneficial insects that can be found if we look hard enough. There might be some lacewings out here, or ladybugs feeding on any aphids or anything that could be here, and also working on the pests that could be in the vines as well. And I have my loops here so we can take a look for some thrips. And one way to check for thrips is to gently shake a couple of leaves and see if there's any minute little black, and I don't have any in my hand, but they're very small, like fresh ground pepper in your hand, and see how many thrips there are, or other small insects. We're looking at right now is called hoe plowing, or French plow. It's where we're removing dirt and weeds from the trunk, around the trunks of the vines mechanically, and rolling it over, and then as we come back to cultivate, it'll be pushed back in under the vines. It's one way to help farm organically here and take care of weed control. So a good operator is going to continually watch the tip of that plow, even though he can't actually see it in the soil. But the idea is basically he's reaching under more than halfway and pulling that dirt, that soil, and the weeds and any brush that might be left behind. And you can see that trigger, and you can probably hear the trigger actually moving that plow. So basically it's all hydraulics right now that's working that. The operator just has to drive a nice straight line, and there's a space on that bar that he needs to kind of use as a target so he gets good uniform pattern of removal. And then once the hoe plowing is done, then a crew will come in with shovels and just clean up the little island of dirt and weeds around the post and or the vines, and just make sure all the weeds are basically dead at this point. And we'll leave this dirt rolled over on top of the weeds that are underneath for a couple of days or a week, and let it smother out any of that green growth that's there before it gets pushed back with the cultivation of the disc or whatever implement we're going to use. We're going to be getting ready for suckering, an operation that is very necessary, like pruning, and that is the removal of any unwanted green shoots from the cordons and the trunks. And it's a labor-intensive job of coming through and manually removing excessive green shoots. That gives us lots of room for the 2 primary or 3 primary shoots to grow and have room for those clusters. So it's a very labor-intensive and highly skilled project as well. It's just to remove, if we have doubles, we call them doubles, that come 2 shoots out of a bud, such as right here. One of these would be removed, and this one in this case would be the smaller one. Because again, we only want one. When we go to prune, we only want 1 shoot to remain. I see a lot of these shoots out here this year have 2 clusters. This is a cluster and a cluster prior to blooming, to flowering, which will probably happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. As these shoots elongate a little bit more, the clusters will start to open up a little bit more, and the initiation of flowering will happen probably, my estimate, about mid-May. And if the weather is cooperative this spring, we should have a pretty good set, and that means the berries adhering to the clusters, to the rachises, and hopefully that will transfer all the way through to harvest. So those are kinds of things that we're currently doing in the vineyards throughout the valley, and everybody is pretty much on board with doing the same type of thing.